This is a beginning Maya tutorial, and also I'm going to show how to do some keyframe animation. So when you first open Maya, it probably looks something like this. There are some symbols here at the top, and you have different sets of these symbols that are on shelves. So most likely yours opened up to the polymodeling set, which is what we're going to use. So I'm going to click on the cone right here. You can click on any of these. I'm going to click on the cone, and you'll see it then creates a cone in the middle of your grid. And you can see this cone in different views. If I hit my space bar, I will get 4 views. So I just tap my space bar to do that. I've got 4 views. I have the 3D view or perspective view, a view from the top, from the front, and from the side. Now front and side are really just 2 different sides, so that's why they look the same. And if I tap my space bar again, as long as my mouse pointer is over one of these screens, that's going to become the big screen. So if I tap it again, the top view is now the big screen, or tap it again, it's 4 views, or tap it again while I'm over the front view, and that's the big screen. Tap it again, 4 views, and now I'm going to be over the perspective view and tap it, and now I've got my perspective view again. Okay, so you can also move this cone around, and these are your tools for moving your items, your models, here on the left. So the first one is an arrow, that's just select. The next 2 are 2 other kinds of select that I'm going to skip over for now. And then there's move, rotate, scale. So here's move. I'll click move. And I've got these 3 arrows. So I can move if I drag, click and drag, left mouse, click and drag. One of these arrows, it will only move along that axis. Or I can drag the red arrow, which turns yellow, and move it along that axis. Or this green arrow, which also turns yellow, and move it up and down. If I grab from the very center, right here, the center box, it will move freely. But generally, I don't do that too much. I don't use the free move all that much, because sometimes it's kind of hard to tell where something is in 3-dimensional space, because we are in fact looking at a 2D screen. So something could be far away and you think it might be really close. And until you kind of look around, you're not really going to know where you are. So I generally stick to these set axes, because it makes it easier to understand what I'm doing. Okay, the next one down, that's move. The next one down here is rotate. Rotate gives you these little rings, and you can rotate on this ring like this, or this ring over here like that, or this outer ring like that. Or if you grab anywhere that's not a ring in here, it will freely rotate. Now, usually when I rotate, I will freely rotate, because you're trying to get something in position, and rotation, you might rotate in different all 3 axes at once. You'll also notice over here, if your channel box is open, if your channel box is not open, you can click it open. It's here on the side. So you have channel box, modeling toolkit, and attribute editor. So you click it, and your channel box opens. Watch what happens when I rotate. You'll see that these numbers in the rotate X, Y, and Z change whenever I rotate it. That also is true for the move, which is translate. Translate is the same thing as move. Translate X, Y, and Z. I can go back to my move tool, and you'll see that these numbers, the translate Z is changing with this 1. And Y is, you remember, the Y is like a tree growing out of the grid, up and down. And so up and down, it'll do my translate Y. So you can see the numbers as you wish. I can put all these back to 0. You can actually put numbers in, just select them and just press a number. And I can now center it exactly. So you can work by the numbers if you wish. Same things with these rotates. I can put all these rotates back to center as well. The next one here is scale. Next one down here on the left is scale. And that gives you these little boxes. So I can scale in one direction like this. And you'll see it's changed my scale of Z right here, the numbers. And so I want to go back to where it was. I'll just hit Control Z for undo. I can scale in this direction, Control Z for undo, or this direction, Control Z for undo. Or if I want to just make the whole thing bigger and smaller, not change its shape, I can grab the very middle box right here, and that will make it bigger and smaller. And these numbers here and the scales will all three always be the same then. And I can undo it again. Okay, so that's basic navigation here as far as your selection. And these four things, the select, the move, the rotate, and the scale, are tied to the first quick keys, the first keys on your keyboard of Q, W, E, R of QWERTY. So I can hit Q for select, W for move, E for rotate, R for scale. So it just kind of goes down the line here. So what a lot of people do when they are modeling something is that will have their four fingers on Q, W, E, R on their left hand, and then have their right hand on the mouse. Unless, of course, you're left-handed, which you might reverse that. So Q, W, E, R. If you forget what those are, it doesn't matter. There's only four. You can just kind of keep pressing them until you get the ones that you want. So it could be a very fast way to work. So now I'm going to delete this by hitting my delete key, and it's gone. And I can make other things. I could make, let's say, a sphere. We'll delete that. Here's a cube. I can delete that, etc. Let me make that. Well, I'll make this torus right here, donut shape. So let's see about moving around as well. So if you hold your Option key, holding down your Option key, all your moving around was going to be with your Option key held down. If I hit my left mouse, I can move around like this. So I'm rotating around my object. If I use my right mouse button, it becomes a zoom, or dolly in, dolly out, if you want to call it that. You can also use your mouse wheel to do the same thing, although it's a little bit more accurate. You can get kind of finer increments if you use your right mouse button. But usually if I'm just doing something real quick, I'll just use my middle mouse wheel. Now, if you press your middle mouse wheel, hold it down like a button, because it's also a button, and then move around, it moves it freely like this. So left is rotate, middle is move like this freely, and then right is zoom or dollying in and out. And also the scroll wheel repeats that. So that's how you get around. If you happen to lose your way, I mean, let's say you're off in the middle of space somewhere, if your item is selected and you hit F for focus, it will immediately pop it to the middle of your screen. So that can be really useful if you get lost. You can't find your items anymore. If you have a lot of items, you might get lost. Okay, so that's basic navigation and moving around objects, etc. And so now let's learn a little keyframe animation. So what I'm going to do is we're going to recreate this old video game, one of the very first video games that ever came into personal use was this game Pong. You might remember this. It kind of looked like this. There's a little video of playing Pong. It's kind of like table tennis, electronic. So what we're going to do is we're not going to actually make a video game. We're not going to code a video game. We're going to turn this into sort of a little story of what happened while playing Pong. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. And so this is going to be my Pong table right here, the grid. So I'll click on the cube right here, and it puts a cube there. But that, I want to turn this into a paddle, for the left or right side. And so I'm going to need to stretch it out a little bit. So I will click on my scale and use this one puller right here and turn that into a paddle. And then I want to move it to one side so that it can go up and down in my animation like this. Now I need another paddle on the other side. So I could do that same thing and make another paddle and put it over to the other side. Or I could duplicate this one and have an exact same size paddle. So the quick command for duplicate is Control D, D for duplicate. And it is also, you'll find duplicate here. There it is in your edit. There it is, Control D. Or if you're on a Mac, it's Command D. Actually, both work on a Mac. So I hit that, Control D. And you don't see the duplicate. Why? Because it's exactly in the same position as the first one. They just put them right over the top. 3D models can occupy the same space. So it's there. You can't see it because it's right on top of the other one. So I'll put it out of the way. And there they are. I've got two of them. So I'll start these kind of in different positions. Maybe something like that. And now I need a little puck. So I'll just hit the cube again, and there's my puck in the middle. So I'm ready to start my animation. I'll have it sent off to one side. I got to catch it, and then it gets hit back, and I got to catch it. So we have to set keyframes in order to do this. This is keyframe animation. So you'll notice down here on the bottom here, we have a bunch of numbers. This is your timeline, and these are frames, these numbers, and we are going at 24 frames per second by default. We can change that, but 24 frames per second is a perfectly good speed. So that's what we'll keep. And you can expand or contract this timeline using these little boxes here on the right and left. You can just pull a box and it makes it bigger. Or this one gets me to a new position. Now it's between 64 and 122 is what I'll see as my timeline. Or I could drag this back down, starting it back at frame 1. And you can also move this whole thing as well. Anyway, I want to start at frame 1. So at frame 1, I want to put a key tick at this puck. And it's going to be a translate. All we're going to do is we're going to translate or move along these X and Z axis. Remember, Y is like a tree growing out of the grid, so we're not going to use the Y. But I don't really want to have to think about it too much. So I'm just going to take all the translates and use my shift click. I can select all of them at once. And then if I right click after they've all been selected, I can say key selected, and it'll put a key, turns red, on all the translates at once. And that's kind of a quick way of just knowing if I'm going to move this thing. Let's put a key tick right there, because you have to start with a key tick. These don't have key ticks yet. So if I click on, you'll see a little here, there's a little red strike of the key tick of the puck. But if I click on one of these paddles right here, there's no red strike at all. So every object has its own timeline or its own keyframes in the timeline. So there is again with the puck, and it's got a little red mark right there, and it shows red over here as well. So I'm going to say it's going to take about a half a second for, because the game starts kind of slow, it's going to take kind of a half a second for the puck to go to one side. So half a second's about 12 frames. So I'm going to move this is the playhead. You just click anywhere, and that's the playhead. And that's in the timeline there. So I'm going to move to the new position. And I'm then going to take my move tool right here, and I'm going to send it off in this direction. And hopefully this paddle is going to meet it and send it back. So you see there's no keyframe here because I have to, again, right click and say key selected. And now I've got my keyframe, and I can now scrub my playhead back and forth, and you'll see that I've got some movement here. So now let's make this paddle meet it. Now I can't just at frame 12 move it over to meet it because it's not animating yet. It doesn't know when to start moving. You have to, all your animations have to have a start keyframe and an end keyframe for any time you make a move. So I'm going to go back to frame 1 and key all the translates. There it is at frame 1. And now when I go to frame 12, now I can move this. Let's say I'm going to send it off in a new direction. So I'll kind of put it on the edge there. And again, I'm going to key this again. Key selected, turn them all red. And so now I've got a start move at frame 1 of both of these objects, and then they both end their move at frame 12. So now at frame 12, I want to send this puck, let's say over to here. So I'm going to go to frame 24. Let's say it can take another half a second. And I'm going to move it this way and this way. Right there. Works about right. Remember frame 24. And again, I have to right click and say key selected. Let's see what happened. So it hits it and gets sent over to here by frame 24. Now this one has to meet it. But if I just move it right now, it's just going to always be there from the very first frame. You always have to have a beginning of the move and an end of the move. Very important to realize that. And that's probably one of the hardest things for new animators to remember, is that anytime you move something, you have to decide where it begins moving, not just where it ends up. So when is it going to start moving? Well, it has to see that it's heading in that direction. Looks like, let's say about here, it goes, whoa, I better get over there. So that's where I'm going to start at, about frame 15. So that's where I'll make my key for this particular object, this paddle. And then at frame 24, when it gets there, now I can move it over there and key it. Key selected. So now it'll start at 15 and end at 24 and meet it. So let's see what the animation looks like now. It goes bunk, bunk. And then let's say we're going to send this now over here. So this already has its keys at 24. So I'll go, let's say, to 36. I'm just going to go by 12s here and send it out. And again, key selected. You always got to put your key, the beginning and the end of a movement. There it goes. Okay. And now this guy's got to meet it. So he doesn't know where it's going to go until about, let's say about there. You can start to see, okay, I better get over there. So I'm going to start his key right there. Key selected. And then at 36, he's going to meet it. And now he really wants to send it down to this corner, so he's going to get on the edge of it. And again, I've got to key it. Key selected. Okay. And now the puck is going to go way down to that corner. I'll say by frame 46. And key selected. And this guy's got to meet it. Let's figure out where he starts to see it going. About there. I'll key select. And then at 46, he will meet it. Or she. And I hit key selected. That's the end of it. But this isn't a game, right? This is like a little story of like what happened during a game. So we're going to make something new happen down there, maybe something weird or funny. But let's actually run this animation from frame 1 and actually see what it looks like. So when you first run your animation, probably you're going to be set by default to go really fast like this, and it's not the right speed. This is just as fast as your computer can play it. So what you have to do is you have to right click on the timeline and go to playback speed and make it be real time, because it defaults to this play every frame free, and that's like, again, as fast as it can do it. So you want to go to real time, which is 24 frames per second in this case. So I'm going to check that. Let me just make sure that got checked. Yeah, real time. Good. So now I can hit, here's my controls for the animation, and I'll go back to frame 1 by hitting this one on the far left, and then hit play, which is the arrow on the right, and that's what I've made so far. Go back to the beginning. Okay, so like I said, something new is going to happen here. So let's just say that this puck, it gets hit, and it kind of, starts on its way back a little bit, and I'll key that. And suddenly it has a realization, wait a minute, I'm in three-dimensional space. I don't have to do this if I don't want to. And so it takes a moment to think about it. So I'll give it a few frames to think about it where nothing happens. And so again, I'm just going to key it after, say, 6 frames, because that's how long it takes to think about it. And then suddenly it realizes in about 5 more frames, I can go up. And I'll key that. And then it's going to realize it's up in the air for a moment. So I'll give it a few frames to kind of think about that one. Key selected. And then it's going to take off and get out of the game. So in just a few frames, it decides, I'm out of here, and leaves the screen. And I'll key that. So now let's see what I've got. So now it goes bonk, 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 bonk. Wait a minute. I'm out of here. Now maybe something happens after that. Maybe now this player over here decides, what just happened? I need to see where the puck went. So I'm going to key the translates as well as the rotates, because I'm going to make it stand up all of a sudden. So I'm going to say I'm going to key translates, and then I'm going to shift click all the rotates as well. I'm not even sure. It's going to be Y, but I may as well get them all if I don't remember that. So right there at 73, I'm going to key all of these at once. And it's just suddenly going to stand up now. So I'm going to rotate it upward. Oops, that's the wrong one. Rotate it. Come on. Upward. There we go. And I needed to make it, right now it went underneath the grid, so now I have to kind of pull it up as well. Good thing I selected the translates and the rotates, otherwise I wouldn't be able to make it stand up. And I'm going to key all of that. And so it suddenly goes bunk and stands up. And it looks for a moment. So I'll just key everything again, saying don't change between 75 and 81. And then I'm going to make it kind of wiggle, like, what happened? So I'll go to my rotates to make it wiggle. I'll go left, key selected, and maybe a couple frames, make it go right. Key selected, make it go left again. Key selected, and then right again. Key selected, and then maybe come back to pretty much normal. Key selected. All right, let's see what we got. Bonk, 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 bonk. Whoa, I'm out of here. What? All right, so now we have a little animation. little story. All right, so how do you save your work? File, save scene. And so this is where you can then save your scene. You can name it Maya binary is fine, and you can save your scene. And in another video, I'll then show you how to render this into a movie. So that's it for this one.